They laughed when you said God showed you something bigger. They mocked you when nothing was happening in your life. They whispered, "It will never happen for you." But what they don't know, heaven has already scheduled your reversal. Stay with me till the end of this message, because what God is about to do next in your life will not only silence the laughter, it will make them watch every single promise unfold in front of their eyes. Don't skip this video, because somewhere in the next few minutes, you're going to recognize your own story, and you'll understand why the delay was never denial. It was divine preparation. They laughed when you said you felt chosen. They smirked when you walked away from what everyone else was chasing. They whispered when you decided to trust God instead of panic, and they rolled their eyes when you said that one day the same God they doubted would lift you in front of the very people who tried to belittle you. But what they never understood is that when you align your life with the promises written in the pages of the Bible, and when you hold on to the words of Jesus Christ, who said that the last will be first and the first will be last, you are not living for applause, you are preparing for a divine reversal that does not need human permission to manifest, because while they were laughing, God was building, while they were gossiping, God was arranging, while they were doubting, God was documenting every tear you cried in private and every silent prayer you whispered at night when no one else believed in you. And the truth is, they laughed because they judged you by your current chapter without realizing that God is the author who specializes in plot twists that no human mind can predict. They laughed because they saw your struggle but not your calling. They saw your delay but not your preparation. They saw your isolation but not your consecration. They saw your weakness but not the supernatural strength being formed inside you through every rejection, every closed door, every betrayal that felt like the end, and what they mistook as your downfall was actually your training ground, because God will often hide His greatest warriors in seasons that look like defeat, so that when the elevation comes, no one can say it was luck, no one can say it was favoritism, no one can say it was coincidence. They will have to admit that something divine stepped into your story and shifted the narrative in a way that logic cannot explain. And the same people who once mocked your faith will one day sit in silence watching the evidence of God's hand on your life unfold in front of them like a living testimony that cannot be denied, because God does not just bless you for your sake, He blesses you in a way that makes your life a message, a mirror, and sometimes even a warning to those who underestimated what He placed inside of you. And you must understand that their laughter was never a sign of your inadequacy but a reflection of their inability to perceive what heaven was crafting behind the scenes. Because when God is about to elevate someone, He often allows them to be misunderstood, overlooked, and even ridiculed, so that their dependence shifts completely from people to Him. And in that hidden place where you felt forgotten, you were actually being fortified. In that lonely season where no one clapped for you, heaven was applauding your endurance. In those nights when you questioned your worth, God was strengthening your identity beyond human validation. And the irony of it all is that the very stage they thought you would never stand on will become the platform where God makes them watch, not so you can boast but so they can witness what faith looks like when it refuses to die under pressure, because the same God who raised Jesus Christ from rejection to resurrection is the same God who can take your humiliation and turn it into honor, the same God who can turn whispers into applause and mockery into admiration. And when that shift happens, it will not be loud at first. It will be undeniable, it will be steady, it will be strategic. Doors that Where once locked will open without you forcing them, opportunities will find you without you begging for them, favor will surround you without you manipulating for it, and suddenly the people who laughed will find themselves watching in disbelief as the person they discounted becomes the person they cannot ignore, because God has a way of vindicating His children in public after developing them in private. And you must not rush the process because the delay is not denial, it is design, it is refinement, it is positioning, and every tear you cried was watering seeds you could not see, every insult you endured was strengthening your resilience, every setback was redirecting you to something greater, and while they thought your silence meant defeat it was actually discipline. While they thought your patience meant weakness it was actually wisdom. While they thought your absence meant irrelevance it was actually preparation for a re-entry that would shift atmospheres, and one day when they scroll past your name or hear your story or see your elevation they will remember the moment they laughed and realize they misjudged a process that God was orchestrating. Because what God is about to do in your life will not require revenge, it will require revelation, it will reveal who truly believed in you, it will reveal who secretly hoped you would fail, it will reveal who underestimated your God. And as you step into that new season you will not carry bitterness, you will carry clarity. You will understand that their laughter was necessary because it detached you from seeking approval, it pushed you deeper into prayer, it forced you to develop skills in obscurity, it taught you how to stand alone when no one stood with you, and now that you are stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your purpose, God is making them watch not as spectators of your ego but as witnesses of His faithfulness. Because when heaven decides to endorse someone no amount of human mockery can cancel it, when God puts His signature on your life no criticism can erase it, and the same mouths that once laughed may one day speak your name with respect, not because you demanded it but because the evidence of transformation will be too powerful to deny. So do not be discouraged by the laughter. Do not be distracted by the whispers. Do not be defined by the opinions of people who cannot see beyond your current circumstances. Keep building, keep believing, keep trusting, because the God who sees in secret rewards in the open, the God who heard your silent cries is about to answer in a way that echoes, and when the shift happens it will not be about proving them wrong, it will be about proving that faith was right, and as you rise you will realize that every moment of humiliation was shaping humility, every delay was deepening dependence, every tear was strengthening trust. And now the same people who laughed will have front row seats to a miracle they never expected, because God does not forget, God does not overlook, God does not abandon, He completes what He starts, and if He started a promise in your life then no laughter, no doubt, no betrayal, no delay can stop what is already written in heaven, so stand firm, stay faithful, and remember this powerful truth that will carry you through every mocking voice and every silent season. They laughed at the seed, but God is about to make them watch the harvest. And as the story continues you begin to realize that the laughter was only the surface of something much deeper, because when people laugh at you for trusting God what they are really reacting to is the boldness it takes to believe in something they cannot control, and while they were comfortable measuring success by money, status, and popularity you were measuring your life by obedience, alignment, and faith. And that difference made you look strange to them, it made you look unrealistic, it made you look naive, but what they could not see was that heaven was using every moment of isolation to recalibrate your spirit, to purify your motives, to strip away the need for validation so that when the elevation finally comes you will not worship the blessing more than the one who gave it. Because the pattern has always been the same from the very beginning, written in the Bible, where those who were chosen were often misunderstood first, where those who were called were often criticized before they were celebrated, and you are walking through that same pattern right now, a pattern where God allows the misunderstanding so that the miracle cannot be mistaken for human effort, and the same people who once laughed will slowly begin to notice that something about you is different, that you did not break under the pressure they expected you to crumble under, that you did not retaliate when they provoked you, that you did not quit when it would have been easier to disappear, and that consistency in the face of mockery is what unsettles them the most, because deep down they know that if you were truly weak you would have given up by now, but you did not. You stayed, you prayed, you worked, you trusted, and every silent act of obedience was adding weight to your testimony. Every unseen sacrifice was building substance behind your success, and when God makes them watch, it will not be a sudden explosion that fades quickly. It will be a steady unveiling that forces them to confront the fact that the person they underestimated carried a divine assignment all along. And what makes this even more powerful is that your rise will not come with arrogance, it will come with peace, it will come with clarity, it will come with a confidence that is rooted not in ego but in experience, because you will know what it cost to get there. You will remember the nights you questioned everything, the days you felt invisible, the moments when quitting felt logical, and you will also remember how God sustained you when nothing around you made sense, and that memory will keep you humble while you ascend, and the people who laughed will feel something they never expected to feel, not just surprise but conviction, because your transformation will quietly challenge their disbelief, your perseverance will expose their impatience, your faith will highlight their fear. And without you saying a single word, your life will preach a message louder than any argument ever could, and that is how God vindicates His children, not through revenge but through revelation, not by humiliating your enemies but by elevating you so undeniably that even your critics have to admit that something supernatural has taken place. And as you move into this next chapter, you must guard your heart carefully, because when the tables turn, the temptation will be to replay the laughter in your mind and let bitterness grow where faith once lived. But remember that the same grace that carried you through rejection is the grace that must carry you through recognition, because elevation without humility can destroy what patience built. And the reason God allowed you to be laughed at first was to teach you compassion, to teach you endurance, to teach you how to stand firm without becoming hardened. And now when He makes them watch, it will not be so you can mock them back, it will be so you can demonstrate what maturity looks like when it has been forged in fire. And there is something profoundly powerful about rising without revenge, about succeeding without spite, about shining without throwing shade, because that kind of rise cannot be questioned, it cannot be dismissed, it cannot be explained away as luck or manipulation. It stands as living proof that when God decides to lift someone, no human opinion can keep them down, and slowly but surely the narrative will shift, conversations will change, attitudes will soften. The same voices that once joked about your dreams will grow quiet when those dreams become tangible, and in that silence you will recognize that this was never about proving them wrong, it was about proving that obedience works, that patience pays, that faith is not foolish, and the greatest victory will not be their silence but your peace, because you will finally understand that their laughter was never powerful enough to cancel your calling, it was only loud enough to test your commitment. And you passed that test not by fighting back but by holding on, by trusting that the God who sees in secret was still working even when nothing seemed to be moving, and now as the manifestation unfolds you will see doors opening that you did not knock on, connections forming that you did not force, opportunities aligning that you did not chase, and all of it will point back to one undeniable truth, that while they laughed heaven was legislating your breakthrough, while they mocked heaven was mobilizing resources. While they doubted heaven was declaring favor over your name, and when the full picture is revealed you will stand not as someone who got lucky but as someone who stayed faithful, and the same people who once treated you like a joke will realize that they were watching the early scenes of a story that God Himself was writing, and now as the climax approaches they have no choice but to sit back and witness the fulfillment of promises they never believed would come to pass. Because this is what divine reversal looks like, this is what redemption feels like, this is what happens when laughter meets persistence and persistence partners with God, and in the end you will not need to announce your victory because the transformation will speak for itself. The fruit will speak for itself, the favor will speak for itself, and the God who carried you through humiliation will now carry you into honor, making them watch not to shame them but to show them that what they once laughed at was actually the very thing heaven had already approved. And as you step even deeper into this unfolding story you begin to understand that what is happening now is not just elevation but exposure. Not your exposure but the exposure of every false narrative that tried to define you, because when God makes them watch He is not only revealing your blessing, He is dismantling the lies that were spoken over your name, the assumptions that were whispered behind your back, the quiet conclusions people drew when your life did not move on their timeline. And the beauty of this moment is that you did not have to defend yourself. You did not have to argue, you did not have to chase down every rumor and correct every misunderstanding, because the God who authored your destiny has a way of clearing your name without you ever opening your mouth, and just like it is written in the Bible that God prepares a table before you in the presence of your enemies, you are now sitting at a table that once seemed impossible, surrounded by evidence that cannot be denied. And the same people who once laughed are now trying to understand how you remained steady when everything around you suggested you should collapse, how you stayed hopeful when doors kept closing, how you kept believing when results were delayed. And the answer is simple but powerful. You were never relying on their approval to sustain you, you were relying on the promises of God. You were holding on to the words of Jesus Christ, who taught that those who endure to the end will be saved, and endurance became your weapon, patience became your strategy, faith became your foundation, and now what they are witnessing is not sudden success but accumulated obedience, not overnight favor but years of unseen discipline, and this is why the shift feels so undeniable, because it is rooted in something deeper than talent or timing. It is rooted in transformation, and transformation cannot be faked. It cannot be rushed, it cannot be manufactured for applause, it is forged in quiet places where only you and God know, the battles you fought, the tears you wiped away, the doubts you wrestled with, and the moments you chose to trust instead of retreat. And now as the results surface there is a weight to your presence that was not there before, a confidence that does not need validation, a peace that does not depend on circumstances. And that internal shift is what truly unsettles those who once laughed because they expected you to be bitter, they expected you to be defensive. They expected you to carry the scars in a way that made you harsh, but instead you carry them as proof of survival, as reminders of grace, as evidence that what tried to break you actually built you, and when God makes them watch it is often in silence, not with dramatic announcements but with steady progress that forces them to revisit every assumption they made about you, and in that process something powerful happens. Their laughter turns into reflection, their mockery turns into curiosity. Their dismissal turns into respect, because consistency over time is a language that even skeptics understand, and you have been speaking that language through your perseverance, through your growth, through your refusal to quit when quitting would have justified their doubts, and now as you stand in a new season you realize that this was never about revenge, it was about revelation. It was about revealing who truly supports you and who only supported the version of you that looked small. It was about revealing the strength that was hidden beneath your struggles. It was about revealing the faithfulness of a God who does not abandon his promises, and as you look back you can see how every delay was actually protection, how every closed door redirected you from spaces that were not aligned with your calling, how every betrayal clarified who was meant to walk with you into the next chapter. And suddenly the laughter does not sting the way it used to because you see it differently now. You see it as part of the pruning process, part of the separation, part of the refining fire that ensured only the right voices would have access to your future. And this awareness changes everything because instead of carrying resentment you carry gratitude, gratitude for the growth, gratitude for the lessons, gratitude even for the laughter that once hurt but ultimately strengthened your resolve. And as your life continues to expand you will notice something else, that God is not just making them watch your success, He is making them watch your character, your integrity, your consistency, your humility, because true elevation is not proven by what you gain but by who you remain, and you have remained grounded, you have remained faithful, you have remained aligned with the values that carried you through the valley, and that consistency is what turns temporary victories into lasting legacy. And the people who once laughed will come to understand that what they dismissed as foolish faith was actually unshakable conviction, what they labeled as unrealistic hope was actually divine assurance, and what they saw as weakness was actually restraint, and in this final phase of the shift you will recognize that the greatest reward is not their silence or their admiration but your freedom, freedom from needing to prove yourself, freedom from replaying old conversations in your mind. Freedom from shrinking to make others comfortable, because now you know who you are, you know whose you are, and you know that the same God who carried you through obscurity will carry you through visibility, and as He continues to elevate you the watching will continue, not because you demand attention but because light naturally draws eyes, and when light shines after a long night it exposes everything. It exposes doubt, it exposes envy, it exposes regret, but it also exposes possibility. Because some of those who laughed will secretly be inspired, they will begin to question their own disbelief, they will start to wonder what might happen if they trusted God the way you did, and without you preaching a sermon your life will become one. Without you seeking validation your journey will validate itself, and in the end the laughter will be remembered not as a wound but as a turning point, the moment that separated those who mocked from the one who made a way. And you will stand as living proof that when people laugh at the beginning of your story it does not determine the ending, because God writes conclusions that silence critics. He orchestrates reversals that humble doubters, and when He decides that it is time for your harvest no amount of past laughter can stop the sound of destiny unfolding right in front of those who once thought it would never happen. And now as this final chapter unfolds, you begin to see that what God is doing is bigger than vindication and deeper than visibility, because when He makes them watch, He is completing a cycle that started the moment you chose faith over fear, the moment you decided that their laughter would not dictate your identity, the moment you surrendered your timeline to a divine schedule that does not rush and does not forget. And this completion carries a different kind of power, because it is no longer about proving that you were right, it is about demonstrating that God was faithful, and there is a profound difference between the two, because when you try to prove yourself you operate from ego, but when God proves His faithfulness through your life you operate from evidence, and the evidence now speaks louder than every joke that was told at your expense, louder than every dismissive glance, louder than every conversation where your name was mentioned with doubt instead of belief. And what makes this moment so powerful is that you did not change who you are to get here, you did not compromise your values to gain acceptance, you did not abandon your convictions to fit into spaces that once rejected you. Instead, you allowed the process to shape you without corrupting you. You allowed the pressure to refine you without hardening you. You allowed the delay to mature you without discouraging you. And that is why the elevation feels different, it feels stable, it feels earned in the spirit, even if it looks sudden in the natural, because what they are witnessing now is the visible manifestation of invisible perseverance. And just as the Bible teaches that we walk by faith and not by sight, you have been walking in trust long before there was tangible proof, and now that the proof is appearing, it is not shocking to you the way it is to them, because you already saw it in prayer, you already felt it in your spirit, you already believed it when there was no external confirmation. And that internal certainty is what carried you through the seasons of mockery without losing your sense of purpose, and as God continues to elevate you, He is also repositioning you, placing you in rooms that once seemed inaccessible, aligning you with people who value your presence instead of tolerating it, opening doors that do not require you to shrink to stay inside them. And this repositioning is part of the divine strategy, because the same people who laughed are now watching not only your success but your standards, not only your growth but your boundaries, and they are realizing that the person they underestimated has become someone they must respect, and respect that is earned through resilience carries more weight than approval that is given casually. And in this season you will notice something else happening within you, a deep sense of closure, not because they apologized, not because they admitted they were wrong, but because you no longer need them to. You have outgrown the need for their acknowledgement. You have stepped into a confidence that is anchored in God rather than in public opinion, and that is the ultimate victory, because when you are no longer controlled by the memory of their laughter, you are truly free, and freedom allows you to move without hesitation, to speak without fear, to shine without guilt. And this freedom becomes contagious, because others who once watched you struggle will now watch you soar and realize that perseverance is possible, that faith is practical, that trusting God is not a weakness but a strategy. And some of the very people who laughed may quietly begin to change. They may never admit it openly, but your journey will challenge their cynicism. Your consistency will confront their doubt, your peace will disrupt their anxiety, and without you forcing anything, God will use your life as a living testimony that His timing is perfect, that His justice is thorough, that His promises are reliable, and in this final stretch you must remember to stay grounded, because elevation can be as testing as obscurity. Success can test your humility just as struggle tested your faith, and the same discipline that carried you through rejection must now carry you through recognition. The same prayer life that sustained you in private must sustain you in public, the same gratitude that kept you hopeful in lack must keep you humble in abundance. Because the goal was never just to rise, the goal was to rise and remain aligned, to rise and remain kind, to rise and remain dependent on the one who orchestrated it all. And when you look back over the entire journey, you will see that the laughter was only the beginning of a story that God was determined to finish, a story where ridicule turned into revelation, where doubt turned into demonstration, where mockery turned into marvel. And the people who once laughed are now silent, not because you silenced them but because the outcome did, because destiny unfolded in a way that left no room for debate. And as you move forward, you will carry this truth with you like armor that cannot be pierced. When God is involved, the end will always justify the endurance. When God authors your path, no human opinion can cancel your purpose. And when He decides to make them watch, it is not to glorify you but to glorify the faithfulness that carried you from being laughed at to being looked up to. And in that transformation lies the ultimate testimony that what was once a joke became a journey, what was once dismissed became undeniable, and what was once laughed at became living proof that when you trust God through every season, He will finish your story in a way that commands attention without you ever demanding it.